Let's have a small recap of our knowledge about JavaScript while learning the TypeScript. As the both languages are almost similar, that's why you will see similarity between the JavaScript while writing your TypeScript code. And we'll see how we can run our TypeScript code with the help of Node we installed earlier. Reasons we need to know about TypeScript is that because Angular framework needs TypeScript at the backend. We implement our logic with the help of TypeScript language for our web pages. And as it is designed and developed by Microsoft, so we need not to worry about the online community which will help us if we face any error while learning the TypeScript. TypeScript is also an object-oriented programming language, which means it has classes and interfaces. How to implement and write these classes and interfaces we will study later in this video. As you can see within the picture here, the TypeScript encapsulates the JavaScript, which means every JavaScript code is actually a TypeScript code, but not the other way around. So there are new features in TypeScript which make it different from JavaScript, but uh, the syntax and the way we write the TypeScript is exactly similar to JavaScript. So every JavaScript code is a TypeScript code also, and that's why the Angular at the back uh, transpiles this TypeScript code into JavaScript so that our browser can understand this TypeScript code. And the last feature of TypeScript code is the compilation error it shows if you face any error while writing your code. While writing code in JavaScript, we used to see the errors in our console in our browser, where now we can directly see it on the terminal and it shows more beautifully rather than seeing the errors in our terminal in a browser. As we know, JavaScript code is also a TypeScript code. So now let's write a very simple JavaScript code inside our TypeScript file, and we'll see how we can make a TypeScript file and run it with the help of Node we installed earlier. Now I will open my text editor here, and I'll create a new file, and I will name this as app. App is just the name of the file, and the extension of this file should be .ts, which stands for TypeScript. Now I'll write the very simple JavaScript code, which is console.log, and within this console.log, I can give any string. Let's give hello world. Now save this file, and we can open terminal outside also, but I will open a terminal within this code editor with the help of control plus tilde, and we have got this terminal here. Now to run our app.ts file or the ts file with the help of Node, we need to write node, then space, then the name of the file, which is app.ts. Now hit enter. We see the hello word being printed here. This is our TypeScript file running with the help of Node outside the browser. Earlier, we need to write the JavaScript code inside an HTML file, and then in the browser it used to run. Now we can write our JavaScript code and use Node to run that file independently. Let's see more about TypeScript, and along with that, we will review JavaScript. So let's look into different type of data types in TypeScript. We have a number type, we have a Boolean type, we have a string type, and at the end we have a any type. This is something different from plain JavaScript. And the way we define a variable in TypeScript is we write let, then a variable name, then a colon, then a variable type, then that is equals to some value which we want to give to this variable. We have used let keyword to define a variable. We can also use const and var keyword to define a variable. The const keyword, the let keyword, and the var keyword, all of them have different scopes, which means they're defined within different scope and the value vanishes after that scope ends. So we'll look into different scopes for const, let, and var keyword. Let's first try implementing some code with some basic data types in TypeScript. I'll open my code editor and we'll start looking at some code. So we have this plain file and let us write some variables inside it here. So the way we define a variable was we use a let keyword, then the name of the variable, let's say X, then we say number, and this is equals to 10. We can similarly give it some float value with the same variable type of number, and then we can say 10, 10.2. So it doesn't matter if you give an integer or a float, if the number data type will take all of the values. Now let's try to give some string. Let's say the variable is s and it is of type string, and within the value we can give hello world. And we can also give it only a character. Both will be of type string only. Similarly, let's make a Boolean character or Boolean variable using Boolean, and that is equals to false. Last is our any data type, which we use to declare a variable first, and then we can assign whatever value later in code we want to give to that variable. Let's say we want to define let A be of type any. We don't need to give any value here, but if we want, we can give a value right away. So we have defined a variable, say any, a variable A of type any. Let's give it a value. Let's try to give it a string which says hello, and we will console.log this value A. Let's save this code and try to run it inside a terminal. So we are at the working directory. Now let's use our node.app.ts file, and when we'll hit enter, we'll see there is some error. This is because the app.ts file is a TypeScript file, while in the node we run the JavaScript code. Right now, the thing which we have written are outside that circle and actually falls into TypeScript zone. This is not a plain JavaScript. This is a TypeScript code. So first we need to convert this TypeScript code into a JavaScript code, which the Angular does it automatically. But if we want to do it manually, we can use command tsc, stands for TypeScript, then the name of the file app.ts. When we'll hit enter, it processes, and as you can see, there's a new file generated automatically which says app.js. Let's look into this file. Here we don't have a let keyword, and also we don't have any data type. So according to whatever the code we wrote in TypeScript, a JavaScript is converted accordingly, which does the same job as we wanted to be done in TypeScript. So when this TypeScript when this JavaScript code is generated using a TypeScript compiler TSC, now we can use our node, then give this JavaScript file, which is app.js, then hit enter. Now we can see our hello is being printed, which we wanted to be printed with this any type. So this any type is actually in the JavaScript was a variable a, then this a variable was given the string and normal console.log was uh, made here. So we write everything in TypeScript and just have this in back of your mind that all of this is actually going to be converted into JavaScript code, which we need not to worry about, which the Angular does it automatically. But if we want to convert a code and run it manually, we can use TSC, then the name of the TypeScript file, and it will generate a JavaScript file of the same name, but with the extension .js. Let's close this file. And now what if we, as we know, we can give any data type to this any a variable. So now let's give it a boolean, which is true, and try to print it again. Now let's do this whole thing again. First, we convert this into an JavaScript file. Then we use Node to run that JavaScript file. So at first there's a hello and then there's a true printed. While if we have written a simple JavaScript code, we would have got an assertion error because they would have been of different type. Now let's look into app.js file. So it is similar to what we were trying to do. Now let's look into different type of data keywords which we saw earlier. So here altogether we were using let keyword. So now let's see what are difference between let, var and const keyword. So let's try to define a keyword using const, and then we give a variable name, let's say x, let's say s only, and this is of type string, and the string is hello world. Now let's try to console.log the string, the s variable. Now we'll do that same process again. We get hello world printed. Now let's try to reassign this s string to some other string. Let's say s is equals to only hello, not the word. As you can see, we are getting some error here which says cannot assign to s because it is a constant. So with the help of this const keyword, you can only assign a value once and the values cannot be changed. Which this is how the const keyword works. Where if we define this using a let keyword, this would not have been any problem because we can we can redefine the value to a variable within the let keyword and also with the help of var keyword. So this is the difference between const and the let and var keyword. Now let's look into what is actually the difference between var keyword and a let keyword using the different type of scopes. So let's first write the function and we'll see if they differ inside a function or not. So to write a function, we used to write the function keyword, then the parentheses, then a curly bracket. If and right after the function keyword, we should give the name of the function. Let's say fun. Within the parentheses, we can give the parameters which we want our function to include. But right now we'll leave it and we'll define two variables, one with the help of let, another with the help of var. Let x equals to local, variable y is equals to local 2. If we try to console dot log them x comma y, we don't get any error. Now let's call this function, and now if we try to console.log these x and y values, we get error in both of them. Which says cannot find x, and for y it also says cannot find y. This is because the variables which were defined inside the function are only scoped inside the function definition. They cannot jump outside the function. So the let and var both follow the function scope. Now let's try our block scope. So what is a block scope? So block scope is nothing but anything which comes between these two curly brackets. So within the code, if we write some code within this parameter, within this curly brackets, they follow a block scope, and the variable and let uh, differs between the block scope. So let's write maybe a variable x, which is a string local, and let y equals to be local. Now let's try to console.log the value of x and y. As we can see, there is no error on the x while there is an error on y, which says cannot find the name y. This is because the variable keyword, the var, defines the function, does not follow the block scope, while the let keyword follows the block scope. So anything defined within this block scope, within this curly brackets, it will be, the variable will be deleted once this curly bracket ends. While for the variable keyword, the var keyword, it does not follow the block scope. So this is difference between var and let keyword. Let's get back to our slide and we'll see, as we talked earlier, the block scope, the var does not follow the block scope. That's why there's a no there, while the let follows the block scope. That's why it's yes there. And as we saw earlier, we cannot reassign the const. That's why we have given no here, while we can reassign the let and the var keyword.